when it comes to duck hunting, I always say what a man would do for a duck. There's been more divorces, bankruptcies, fighting on the bank, all of that, Jones, over an old duck. That's how serious it gets. Women leaving, run out of money, you know, saying, what in the world? You see what I'm saying? Fighting out down the bank, you come in on my hole, that's how serious we are about it.
We're going to put this marriage on pause for duck hunting.
From the foremost authority on hunting anywhere, Across America Productions presents Mojo's Hunting Across America. Brought to you by these proud sponsors: Smith & Wesson Performance Center, United Country Real Estate, Wild Game Innovations, Excel Plus International, and Mojo Decoys. It ain't magic if it ain't Mojo. Your hosts with more than 120 years combined experience, Mike Morgan, Jim Jones, and Terry Denman.
Hi folks, I'm Jim Jones and welcome to this week's episode of Hunting Across America. I am honored to be in the home of Phil Robertson. And Phil, let me tell you something, buddy. You have been an icon in the duck industry for a long time. And I want to ask a question. I know that you build duck calls and you make great duck hunting videos.
Yep.
How in the world did you get into this industry?
Well, old Winston Churchill once said that a fanatic is someone who won't change his mind and he can't change the subject. So, starting out years ago, I went out there in front of these large crowds and I'd give them a duck call demonstration, and I'd reach in my old satchel there and I'd bring out my old Bible and I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, while I'm here after this duck call demonstration, I said, think about it like this. I said, where else could you go in America and get a first-rate duck call demonstration and a gospel sermon at the same time? Of course, they'd usually all laugh and they'd think, they said, you know, I don't know whether I've ever seen that venue before. So I'd preach the gospel to them after I gave them a duck call demonstration. And I guess other people got wind of it and they'd ask me to come here and hunt there. So the bottom line is I pretty well travel to and fro across the United States.
In search of the duck.
In search of the duck, and I share the good news with them as I go because as you've noticed, Jones, you look, I think duck hunting is a grand sport. It's an honorable thing. It's sanctioned by God. He pretty well, when you get home, ladies and gentlemen, read Genesis 9, read those few verses there, and he says it's an honorable thing. And old Thomas Jefferson that wrote our Declaration of Independence says, as American citizens, Jones, we have a God-given right to pursue happiness. And my take's always been, what makes me happy is to shoot mallard ducks right in the face. God said it was all right, Thomas Jefferson, and I'm saying go for it, so it's a clean sweep.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're passing on the word of the good Lord and at the same time teaching people how to duck hunt. I think that's great. Well, I know that this year the Louisiana, the Mississippi, and the Arkansas season, and really the whole Mississippi Flyway was kind of a not so good a season for us. And I know that you
headed on the lower end.
On the lower end, that's right. Arkansas and Louisiana normally take most of, or 90% of the ducks in the country come from those two states. It just didn't happen this year. Right. And I know that you kind of took yourself out west this year.
As shocking as it sounds, with the current system we now have in place, which I'm for, by the way, the refuge systems, you know, we have 100 million acres, 100 million plus acres of federal refuges, which I'm for, and I'm for the sanctuaries. But under the current scheme of things, that particular system, in my mind, has literally forced this old boy, born and raised in Louisiana, a great duck hunting state, and Arkansas will say the same thing. It's actually forced me to have to go to other states in order to have a decent duck season. So,
you know, that's really a shame, Phil, because I know that in Louisiana, right here in your backyard, you live out here on River, and I know that y'all used to have tremendous duck hunting here, and it's just not that way anymore, is it?
I think what we either have unwittingly done or maybe it's by design, I hope it wasn't, but I think we've zeroed in the people we purchased the refuges, the people have, and we've hired U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to run them. If you add the state refuges and their sanctuaries to that, and then all your private sanctuaries to that, what you've ended up with basically is a landmass that is huge. So the problem comes because all of our biologists say 85% of all waterfowl are killed and consumed before they leave Canada. So we're not dealing but with 15%, Jones, that heads into the continental United States. We've now set aside enough landmass to hold all of them. They figured it out. Think about it. 180,000 duck hunters in Arkansas and Louisiana, they converge on these ducks that come here. Well, an old mallard duck's pretty smart. He just hops over to what's now waiting for him, a sanctuary system, which I'm for, but I just think maybe we've overdone it. We might ought to rethink how we manage them a little. I think they need managed a little bit better.
Well, let me ask you something. When you say 85, what are you talking about? What happens to the 85% of the ducks before they get out of Canada?
Well, Delta and all have studied it, and so have the feds. And basically, it comes down to the red fox, the coons, and the skunks.
Oh, you're talking about predators eat 85% of the ducks before they ever get going.
Kill and consume, which you have to remember something. That's why God made ducks. He made them as a food source for predators, of which man is one. My take on it is that the focus over the last 75 years has been to provide sanctuary just against one predator, man. We've spent all our resources and set aside all the land and all the rules, all the regulations pertain to only one predator. But we, as a predator, man, we're not dealing but with 15% of the ducks that's left. And the real predators, the coon, the skunk, and the fox, are literally getting the lion's share of the duck population. They're using them as a food source. The agricultural practices have forced these little areas around these potholes, and these predators are just booming. So my recommendation is we need to start focusing more on providing sanctuary for ducks. That 85% that's decimated, provide sanctuary for them
in Canada.
Yeah, with as much fervor as we've done down here once they get here. I'm saying we need to shift our focus now, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to Canada, and with organizations like Delta Waterfowl, and relocate these predators, start putting up fences or electric fences around them, and start protecting ducks, providing them sanctuary against this. It's a natural thing, but the bottom line is it's just out of balance. We need to relocate predators on where ducks nest so that the population up in Canada, if we can get that down to 80% mortality rate instead of 85 or 78 or 76, 75, get 10% more ducks coming out of Canada.
That's a lot of ducks.
A lot of ducks. It would solve our problems.
Well, I tell you, somebody told me the other day that if a mallard drake, and you talk about how smart they are, if a mallard drake made it from Canada to the Mississippi Flyway all the way through the Mississippi Gulf Coast and then turned around and went home, he was virtually impossible to kill that duck with a shotgun the following year. Is that correct?
That's correct. Plus, you have to remember something. In other words, if I think what a lot of our people in leadership doesn't understand is, my proposal would be, in order to help alleviate the problem in Canada of the predation, my proposal would be is get Mike Huckabee from Arkansas, Governor Blanco from down in Louisiana, and instead of us paying $7.50 for a state duck stamp, I'll say we'll pay $50. We pay all the duck hunters in Arkansas, Louisiana, and the other states, give $50 to the states. They can double their money. Instead of $7.50 for a state duck stamp, they get $15. They get double the money. They take the $35 that's left, give it to Delta Waterfowl, and you're giving it to them. It's earmarked for one thing: relocation of predators in Canada, the northern part of the United States, so that the ducks are provided sanctuary against this onslaught of predation. And I think that just by doing that, within 10 years, I really believe, and it's doable, within 10 years, if all the states would join with Blanco and Huckabee, I think that we could have duck populations exceeding 150 million, 200 million ducks a year. I really believe that.
Let me ask you something. I know that you make obviously you're into your 10th video this year, and I know you make a line of duck calls called Duck Commander.
Yep.
And I've got a Duck Commander duck call. It's one of the best calls I've got in my arsenal, as I call it.
I actually didn't name it Duck Commander. My buddy on the duck blind one time, way back in the early 70s, he said, Robertson, I'd had this little duck call, I built it, and he said, you ought to put that thing on the market. And he said, I've got the name for it. And I said, what's that? And he said, call it the Duck Commander, because that's what you do, So my old buddy, Big Al, he's passed on now, but he's the one that actually named that duck call, so I didn't even name the thing.
That's wild.
But you got to remember something. You have two kinds of people who fool with duck calls there, Jones. You've got world championship duck callers, which I'm not. And then you got world champion duck killers.
which you are.
Which I'm not saying I am, but I'm saying, I pursue them pretty hard. So with us, we just try to make our duck calls to sound like an old hen duck. And an old hen duck, Jones, doesn't sound that good, I told someone, I said, the first time I hear a mallard hen fly by, Jones, and do about a 40-note highball, first time I hear a hen duck do that, I'm going to start doing it. But in fairness to those guys that can do the world champion stuff, it's good for the sport, and those boys can really they can play some tunes on those duck calls.
They got more air than I've got. I couldn't blow a highball that long anyway.
Yeah, there's a difference between like duck calling and championship contest calling. But it all works together. It's all good for the sport. I'm not knocking them. I'm just, all those old boys that can do those world champion routines, Jones, most of them they can sound like a duck too. You get them out there in them woods,
I guarantee you they can.
We just got to get these sanctuaries, need to rotate the sanctuaries, don't leave the same piece of ground every year so ducks get zeroed in, like Ball Knob, Arkansas. You hunt half of it, the other half you can't hunt. We'll just swap that. About every 3 years, just rotate it.
You're saying put some pressure on the refuges that are housing all the ducks right now.
Hunting across America, Jim Jones will be back with a look at duck hunting through the eyes of Phil Robertson after these important messages.
They've got a place to go, and like we said, if one made it to the flyway and made it back,
we just have this tendency as humans to overdo it when we get to protecting and conserving. What people need to realize is ducks are a food source. God made them. He said he made them to feed all these other critters he's made. But we just need to keep it balanced, and I don't think humans ought to be shortchanged in the process. So we ought to quit feeding them on these refuges, the sanctuaries. We ought to not feed them, make them feed for themselves out there. And 3, my recommendation is about 9 days out of a 60-day duck season. 51 days, have them sanctuary, provide them sanctuary, which I'm for. They need some place they can go to rest.
Right, they can go rest.
But 9 days for a half a day to let people go in there and kill them a limit, it'd keep the ducks wild, where they just don't sit there, not even afraid of a human. If we don't do that, if we don't allow a little bit of hunting on the sanctuaries, I know the people who are afraid we're going to, kill too many of them and all that, but the bottom line is if we don't hunt them and keep them wild, they'll end up like these Canadian geese that have camped out inside the suburbs up here in Chicago and St. Louis.
And have gotten to be a real problem, like on the golf courses in people's backyard, that type of stuff.
I told someone, I said, in Louisiana, I've never seen anything become a nuisance, anything you could eat. In Louisiana, it never gets to the nuisance stage. It's good to eat.
Somebody's eating it.
Oh, what are you talking about? Louisiana, you go out there, if you see something you can't identify, your first inclination is kill it. And someone said, well, why'd you kill it? I said, well, I didn't know what it was. So you go up there and you and your buddy are looking at it, and the first question is, what in the world is that? And that second question in Louisiana is always there. You reckon we can eat that? And that's the way it works,
Well, I think if you put that Louisiana hot sauce on it, some Cajun seasoning, it's going to taste good anyway.
Them Cajuns eat anything that walks, crawls, flies, or swim, But they've come up with some pretty good delicacies along the way. Who was the first man who looked at a crawfish and said, oh, we need that?
Had to be somebody from Louisiana anyway.
He doesn't look like he'd be worth eating,
Well, let me ask you something. I know since you've been hunting ducks about 30 years, so tell me this, the invention of the spinning wing decoy, like a Mojo.
Yeah.
I know that you use Mojos and I use Mojos. What's your take on Mojo decoys?
My take on them is they're a great tool, just like a duck call. But if you don't scout out your hole and all the preliminary work is done, in other words, they're just like another decoy. Someone said in some of these states, well, man, these spinning wing decoys, we're gonna kill all the ducks. I'm here to tell you that with spinning wing decoys, with duck calls that sound just like ducks, with you camouflaged perfectly, these mallard ducks, they wise up quickly. We personally use them. We went out west and we put out, every time we went out there, we put a Mojo out there, you know. I'm convinced that they help you. We try to disguise them some by putting them in thickets where when ducks fly over, they don't get a good look at them. They just see a little movement in the brush there, and we'll put some kind of rippling system of some sort, you know, where they're making a few ripples, like that one that shakes on the water. So the ducks see ripples, and they see what they think is some movement in the brush. So there are ways you can use a Mojo that'll help you out. You know, if you just put them in the ball open and leave them there, you know. I think the alternating one is real good too, like a duck getting up and, we believe in them, we use them, you know. You'll see on our next video, duck being 8 this year. We went out west to make it, but if you'll notice our spread, every one of them, it has, a lot of them say, well, they got to where they scare ducks, but in reality, ducks have to light, and they have to get up and, we've got some footage that we shot with a lot of mallard ducks there, and the one thing that stood out about all of them was that they were constantly raising up and flapping their wings, and it was movement of wings all along, you know. It's that strobe effect, that little flash, you know. So it was a great invention, a great help to duck hunters, you know. In spite of all that, everyone's got to remember the average duck hunter, Jones, with everything, with Mojos and all, great duck calling and all of that, and scouting out your hole, the average duck hunter still kills about 6 ducks per season.
footage yet, but I'm gonna get a chance in the next few days to do that. Guys, y'all can get these products, I guess, at your local Walmart store, is that correct?
Any independent sporting goods store, Walmart, Bass Pro, Cabela's, pretty well all over the United States. And if they need anything, we have a toll-free number they can call, you know, Duck Commander. So we're here to please, as they say, you know.
Well, that's great. Well, guys, we're about out of time for today's show. Remember, I'm Jim Jones. Remember, hunt hard, hunt safe, make it a fair chase hunt. We'll see you again right here next week on Hunting Across America.
This episode of Hunting Across America was brought to you by Strong-Built Tree Stands and Hunting Accessories, Marathon Seat Covers, custom built for the Avid Hunter's Rig, Outdoor Edge Cutlery, knives for the outdoor adventure, Crooked Horn Outfitters, makers of specialized hunting equipment, Great Day Incorporated, makers of ATV accessories, Steelmaster Building, buildings built to last, Featherflage Camo, Ducks in a Row Camo, The Silencer, the original cough muffler, and by Excalibur Crossbows, the world's finest crossbow.